Now, as you can see, now the thermostat is exposed, so this should be a small little tug and hopefully it will pop out. So let's give it a go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're back out on the Audi TT. Today's job, I have to do a thermostat. Now, it can be very fiddly, this job, because there isn't much room to play with around the engine on an Audi TT, but I think there's a little bit of a cool little method that we can ultimately extract one of these, which is the thermostat, without having to take too many things apart. Now, I think in the manuals they do suggest that you remove the alternator and so on, but I think with the right tools you can get access to the I think they're hex bolts that hold the housing, which is this piece here, a plastic housing which joins the block, and the thermostat sits inside the housing like so. Now, I do recommend on this job that you do get an original thermostat part from VW, which yeah, it's stamped there, the VW group. Get this from TPS. Now, if you do go for alternatives, so aftermarket versions of these, you can go through the pain of fitting it and then failing pretty quickly. I've heard them failing in weeks. So one of the things to not scrimp on is actually the right thermostat, because it's an important part of the engine that if it's not working correctly, it can give false information to your ECU. Your MAF then adjusts, your MAF sensor adjusts, and you can get rich fueling to your engine, which is what I'm experiencing now, because I think the thermostat is currently failed in mine. There is a quick check that you can do through the heater controls, and I think it's number 49, which allows you to see the actual operating temperature of your engine as you're running. Mine is not really getting above 81, 82. I believe it should be in the high 80s and then right up to 100 degrees C, where your fan kicks in and all of that good stuff. And the culprit can be this here. So if this isn't operating properly, your engine thinks differently, adds more fuel to keep it, you know, running the way it should, which means you get bad MPG, and you get a lot of also fouling around your exhaust, so you know, soot and so on, and also on your spark plugs. When you take them out, they're generally very black and sooty, a lot of carbon buildup. So really important to get an original part, and like I said, get one of these as well, because again, when you're removing stuff that's plastic over time, these things can become brittle and break, and yeah, it's a pain if you you don't have one of these and that breaks. Also, you have a little O-ring which fits between those two parts, and then finally the oil dipstick holder. I think again, this part removes with some of the plastic pieces that you've got to clear out the way to get access to the bolts. So it's always good just to maybe have one of these as spares, because again, they become very brittle and can snap, and it can be a pain if you haven't got one to hand. They're a couple of quid, so not much. I think all these parts from TPS, which is the OEM supplier for a lot of the VW group parts, is about 50 quid all in. So honestly, it's worth the spend, so when you do this job you don't have a pain. So let's get out to the car and start showing you around the bits that I have to remove, and ultimately fitting one of these. Okay, so as you can see, we don't have too much room to play with here. As you can see there, that is the pipe that joins to the block, and within that pipe, as it joins to the block, is the thermostat. So that is a rubber hose. It joins to a plastic housing, which can be very brittle after time. So when you remove it, it's good to get a spare just in case it does crack. And then within that is the actual thermostat itself. So very difficult to see, but we're going to start to remove some of these bits, some of this plastic, so we can get access to undoing the two, I believe, Allen head bolts that hold the plastic housing to the block and give us access to the thermostat. Okay, so you can see that we moved all the plastic trim, and now that leaves us with a little bit better access to some of the other parts that we need to remove. So we need to remove this bracket. As you can see, it's a Allen bolt head, one either side, and then we should be able to move this down and remove that with the oil filter housing, oil dipstick housing, and this is where it could break. It's very difficult to see under there, but hopefully that will focus and we will get to see where the housing joins the engine. You can just make out, I don't know if that's going to focus, just behind that part of the alternator there's a hex bolt just behind. That's what we need to get access to. So let's try and remove some of these bits now as well. Okay, so you can see that we've removed this bracket now, and it's starting to clear a little bit of space. This tube here is the cooling pipe that joins to the housing here, which is that plastic housing that I showed you earlier. And as you can see, that is one of the bolts above and one below. Now, the one below is the one that's difficult to get to. So the manuals, it says to actually remove the alternator, but by removing some of these ancillary parts on the outside, we will get access to that bottom bolt, hopefully, by using one of these as well. So just open that, allows you to put a ratchet on at different angles and ultimately undo things a bit easier. Now, I do recommend also that this cooling pipe, you are going to lose coolant, but to minimize that, use one of these clamps just on the pipe back here. You can hold the pipe up as well. You're going to lose coolant coming out the other end as well, but it shouldn't be too much, so you can always top it up afterwards. So I'm going to start removing all of these bits now. Then once we've got better visibility to both of those housing bolts, we will clamp off the pipe, undo this here, and then start to crack off those bolts, and hopefully it will come apart nice and easy. Fingers crossed. Okay, so we've removed this wire from the alternator, and as you can see, and also this clip here which clips to the alternator, and as you can see there is a bracket if I can just move that out of the way. There's a bracket just there, that one there, that is held by, I believe, a 10mm bolt behind it. And when you remove that, we can start to get visibility, and it's very slight, to the bottom housing bolt, and that means we get access to undoing it. So I'm going to clamp, well, I have clamped off now the cooling pipe just there, and we're going to now use pliers to undo that and pull this pipe off. There will be a bit of leak, but clearing this pipe will give me access to undoing this bolt for this bracket, removing that, removing this, and then hopefully we finally see that bottom bolt in a way that we can actually undo it and then start to remove that housing. Okay, so we now have the cooling pipe removed, and I've pushed this out of the way. Looks in good condition still, so no issues there. And as you can see, it's clamped to minimize the loss of coolant. And now we sort of have a little bit better access to getting this bracket undone, so we can just get behind this pipe, the housing pipe, and undo that bolt, and then that should give us access to the bottom housing bolt to undo. So let's keep going on. Okay, so a couple of top tips as you work through this job. One, bungee cord, which is very useful. I've just hooked it over there, holding this back because it gives you, as you can see, a good bit of space, but gives you, my hand gives you an idea of the sort of space you're working with here. It is tight. The oil dipstick, which I recommend you remove after you have done the pipe on the cooling, because what you don't want is any water going down into the oil sump, which is not good. So yes, take off your cooling pipe first, then remove your bracket. And this is what I was talking about earlier, which is the bottom piece here generally snaps. Actually, this one looks in good condition. Dare I say, it might have already been changed before. Can't remember if they came with orange. My other one is yellow, and as you can see, some of the other parts are yellow, but anyway, I'll might just reuse that orange one. Anyway, so now you can see I've removed this wire. Now it's an 8mm bolt that holds this clamping bracket for that wire. I do recommend, again, having one of these, which is an extension with a magnet on the end, because you don't want that bolt disappearing. So again, just a useful tip. But now you can see we have access to that bottom housing bolt. Now it is a certain angle that you've got to come in at, and I'm going to see if we can remove that now, all being well. Let's give it a go. Okay, so we've managed to remove the housing, and yeah, it was a bit of a pig, I have to say. This piece here for me, and you know, it'll be different depending on the tools that you've got. I had to come in almost like a right angle, so I'll just take this off. I had my wobble part of the extension, and I came in literally like this, but then 90 degrees that way, because this part here of the socket with this piece attached could fit snugly behind this this part here, which sticks out. Now there are videos out there where you can come in sort of at a straight angle like this with a wobble end if you've got it. However, you've got to use the tools that you've got access to. So my tools allowed me to do it, but again, I had to come in at a slight angle. So the important thing is when you do all this up is that you don't cross thread anything, and you just take your time and yeah, make sure that nothing goes wrong, as they say. Now, as you can see, now the thermostat is exposed, so this should be a small little tug and hopefully it will pop out. Right, so you can see the new one is in place, and the top tip is have that one ready to go when you remove the old one, mainly because you will save on cooling pouring out the engine, which you saw just happen to me. Anyway, what's interesting is, like a lot of parts that get sort of upgraded over the years, that one has a sort of a small dimple on the top versus this one, which you can see has sort of a cover mount. That one there has that sort of dimple pin coming through. Seems to be more like the newer version. Now, I know aftermarket ones don't tend to be like the original parts, but yeah, TPS is the place that I got it from that says original. What's interesting as well is you'll see on here, this is by Bosch, same as the other one, and it has 88C there, which I'm guessing is the operating temperature for this to open when required. The spring is very pliable, so I can move that quite easily just with one finger, where on the new one I certainly couldn't. So maybe this one was starting to fail, but we'll see once we put this all back together if things are operating better. So I'm going to put the O-ring on here onto the new housing, and we'll get this all screwed in. Okay, so you can see thermostat in, O-ring fitted, and now the housing is on. I wanted to just show you what I meant earlier about the angle of my socket. So that's the angle that I have to go in at, just because of the tool that I have. Let's just give you a better view. There we go. So it fits on snugly, but it comes in that's sort of a almost 90-degree angle. But that's the only way I could get onto that bolt with the tools I've got to tighten it down. So I'm going to tighten those down now. Everything looks nicely fitted, so hopefully no leaks and all is well. Okay, so another useful tip, as I found, is I've used lots of extensions, and then with that right angle piece I can get snugly onto the top bolt, and I also did that for the bottom bolt as well. So it might seem a bit overkill, but it just allows you to get onto the bolt perfectly and then give you enough leverage to tighten them up nice, so you won't get any leaks. So yeah, just a useful tip there, because space is the game on this job and getting a bit of space just to tighten things up is very useful. Okay, so you can see the pipe is back on, the oil dipstick housing is back on as well. So we're just going to refit this bracket, which slots into the oil dipstick housing. A couple of bolts and this pipe as well. Take off the clamp for the cooling pipe and top up the lost fluid in the cooling system, and then we'll give it a run and see, hopefully, that there are no leaks and everything is working as it should. Okay, so we've topped off the lost fluid with some G12 plus antifreeze, and as you can see it's just on the minimum, so I'll top that up a little bit more. We'll reconnect the battery and start the car and see if everything's okay. Okay, so engine has been running for a while, there's no visible leaks, so everything is performing as it should. Engine is ticking over nicely. The fluid level in the antifreeze and the coolant is good. So now just to check how the engine temperature is actually rising, and we can do that inside. Okay, so we press recirculation button and up, and that opens up the menu inside. We turn the temperature gauge to number 49, and then press the recirc button again, and that gives us the temperature of the engine. And as you can see, it says 48 degrees C. Temperature gauge still reading 50, so that's in line. And we'll run the engine for a while and just see if all of that picks up nicely and gets into the, what I'm hoping is the late 80s. And we'll see if the fan cuts in and all of that good stuff. Okay, so we've been for a drive. You can see the engine temperature is on 90, and on the unit here where the secret menu is, it says 89, which is perfect, where previously I was getting sort of 80, 81. So although it was working, it was definitely on its way out. That's where it should be, and everything is ticking over nicely. So yeah, job is a good one, and everything is working as it should. Okay, so the new thermostat is fitted and everything is working as it should. The numbers look good and nothing is leaking or overheating. So I'm hoping this will mean a better running engine, better fuel economy, and overall better performance. Yeah, fingers crossed. I will keep an eye on things as I keep using the car in the coming week or so, just to make sure that everything is as it should be. But yeah, the only drawback about this job is it just isn't much space to work in, and you can see, well, hopefully the video showed just how much space you've got to use, and just moving things slightly left or right gives you just enough access to, you know, undo some of those bolts. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Everything is so well packaged on these cars that it can be a bit frustrating, certainly if you don't take your time and, you know, bolts fall away and you haven't got a magnet to find the bolts, all of that good stuff. So make sure, if you can, to have some of the right tools just to help you get over those frustrations. Otherwise, that's a good job done on the TT. So if you like the videos and you like what you see, then please do drop a like and subscribe. It does help me out in future videos. Lots more coming across the 924 and the 911 now that winter's in, so some of those inside jobs need to be done. So with that, thanks for watching, and the next video will be along very soon.